let's hop into it. The top 5 bounce-back candidates for the NHL season in 2025-26. Of course, going through a whole nother season, historical feats achieved, but a lot of guys that kind of missed the mark along the way. So here's our list of the bounce-back candidates, guys who need to, or we're really hoping they have a bounce-back season in 2025-26. We start with a Boston Bruin. Number 5, Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins. Of course. Just a huge letdown in season number 1 of an 8-year by $8.25 million contract. It started with a ton of drama, right? This went on throughout the summer, and Swayman's like, I'm setting the market. I know my worth. Maine Business School. Cam Neely coming out saying, I know 64 million reasons why I would have signed. It got kind of ugly, okay? And Swayman didn't have a preseason, and it led to a career worst year after making his first All-Star team in 2024. Because you see, Swayman gets the contract based off of his 2024 playoff performance, which was outstanding, even though the Bruins only made it 2 rounds and really had no business even getting past the first round, let alone pushing the Florida Panthers to 6 games. It's because of Jeremy Swayman. In that postseason, he had a 2.15 goals against average and led the playoffs with a .933 save percentage and an 11.1 goals saved above average. The guy was left out to dry, but he was absolutely incredible in those 13 games. He actually only played 12 of them. Linus Ullmark played game 2 of the Toronto series. He was absolutely fantastic. He was the reason why the Bruins got as far as they did. But in 2025, after signing the massive contract, everything took a step back. Career worst, .892 save percentage. Career worst, 3.11 goals against average, 3.11. For a guy getting paid over $8 million a year to stand in between the pipes, that is really not good. And speaking of bad, he had 14 really bad starts. That is, of course, starts where you have a save percentage of less than .850. He was bad. 14 really bad starts in the season of 2024-25. He only had 14 combined in the 3 years of his career leading up to that season. So huge drop off. And we know the way the Bruins build their team around elite goaltending. They are not getting it from Jeremy Swayman right now. They went from, obviously winning a playoff series to down in the basement, 15th in the Eastern Conference. If they want to get anywhere near respectability and take a step towards making the postseason again this year, it's going to need to start and kind of end with Jeremy Swayman needing to step up big time. Number 5, Jeremy Swayman. Number 4 on the list, we go to another team that was a huge disappointment. That's going to be a theme throughout most of this, obviously. But we're sticking in the Northeast. And, well, he's not in the Northeast anymore. That's your hint. Number 4, Chris Kreider, now of the Anaheim Ducks, but of course in this season with the New York Rangers. He was coming off a career year in 23-24 when it felt like a lot of the Rangers were having career years, kind of like what the Bruins did in 22-23. The Rangers won the President's Trophy in 23-24, and Chris Kreider was a huge reason why, right? 39 goals, career high, 36 assists, a career high. Those numbers plummeted the next season. Just 30 points total in 24-25 after going for 39 and 36 the year before. 22 goals, 8 assists, just 2 primary assists the whole season for Chris Kreider. I know he's never been a big assist guy, but how does that happen? You go from your career high in 36 assists, which again, not great, not as many as he had for goals the year before, but goes from a career high of 36 assists down to 8 in 24-25. That is abysmal, man. Just awful. -5 in 68 games on the season to go with his 30 points. This was just a bad deal. And obviously with the Rangers, there were plenty of guys that had down years. There's plenty of guys we could have put on this list just from the New York Rangers, right? Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, Adam Fox took a bit of a step back. Igor Shesterkin signing his big contract did not have a great season in New York. I mean, you could have just gone up and down the list of guys who were disappointments for the Rangers in 25, but certainly coming off a career year and not terribly old, still in his early 30s here. I want to say he's turning 33 this year. You wondered if you got the last bit of hockey out of Chris Kreider. Certainly the Rangers think so. They traded him to Anaheim, and that's where I think he earns a spot on this list in terms of bounce-back candidacy. He goes to an Anaheim team that is very interesting, obviously now with Joel Quenneville as their head coach, who's second or third all-time in wins for a head coach in the NHL. He comes in kind of off the street after the controversy to come in and coach the Ducks, which is a promising young team. And if you look at the line combinations right now, Chris Kreider is looking to center a line be on the wing with a line with Mason McTavish centering it and Mikael Granlund on the other side. Mason McTavish, really interesting story. Sounds like someone who might want out of Anaheim, but a guy who himself is looking for just a small bit of a bounce back year. His potential is still pretty high. And to have a couple of veterans like Kreider and Granlund coming off two pretty different years. You know, Granlund had a good year with Dallas and had a good postseason. It's going to be very interesting to see how that team works. It seems like they could be close to making a playoff push this season. At second line with Chris Kreider on it could be a huge reason why they would get there if they do. So definitely some room for bounce back candidacy for former Boston College great Chris Kreider. Let's move into number 3. And this one feels a little unfair, but I'm going to explain why. It feels unfair because of what we learned about this player after the season. And that player is Roman Josi, the captain of the Nashville Predators. Okay. Josi did not have a good year by any stretch in 24-25. He wasn't having a great year before the concussion injury, but certainly what we found out in the month since doesn't sound great for Roman Josi. Okay. He was diagnosed with POTS, P-O-T-S, which is this thing where it's an injury that you get after a head injury. It's a medical condition you get after a head injury where anytime you like stand up or move around, your heart rate goes up, you're more dizzy. It's almost like kind of a vertigo every time that you do something. And so that's kind of scary. Now, the Predators have said that he is going to play this season, that he's going to be just fine, basically, is what they're saying. And even before that hit by, guess who? Sam Bennett. Crazy, I know, that led him to this injury and this medical condition afterwards. He was having kind of a career worst season for a Nashville Predators team that was a complete and utter mess in 2024-25. He had 38 points, just 9 goals and 29 assists in 53 games, a minus 26, like far and away the worst plus minus of his career, anywhere near a full season. It was just brutal. Only the second time in his career he played a quote full season, which I'm including over 50 games for the sake of this list because that will come back again. It's the only second time in his career he played a full season and scored in the single digits for goals. Like, this guy has been a point machine over his career and certainly even over his last few seasons from the defense position. We saw him have a 90-point season a few years ago. He is one of the best in this generation and certainly one of the best players in Nashville Predators history. The 96 points in 21-22 went down to 59 and then back up to 85. 85 points in 23-24 where he played all 82 games. A point-a-game defenseman, that's one of the rarest things in the league. And he went from that to just a 38-point season in the 53 games. Also had a career high in giveaways in just 53 games. That's someone they really need to step up and be the leader on the ice, even more so than just in the locker room. I think the Predators as a team are due for a bounce back. I just look at that roster and I know they were such a meme this year, but I can't see them being quite that bad again. Like, they were truly in the dregs. I think they had the 3rd worst record in the entire league. Like, they were just horrible all season long. I expect the Predators to be better, and I do expect Roman Josi to be better, and I expect this Roman Josi season to be like one of the stories of the NHL this year. A guy in his creeping up on mid-30s, kind of a scary diagnosis in the summer. If he has a bounce back season, one of the most likable guys in the NHL, that's something that all NHL fans are going to be able to get behind. I mentioned that most of the guys on this list, in fact, 4 of the 5, played for teams that were train wrecks this year, because that obviously makes the most sense for guys going for a bounce back season. Number 2 on this list is kind of the opposite. He was a train wreck on a very good team. And I think you guys probably know where I'm going with this one. The second goalie of the list, number 2, biggest bounce back candidates for the NHL season 25-26, Stuart Skinner of the Edmonton Oilers. Like, I'm begging at this point, man. Connor McDavid, can we get him a goalie? Like, please. There's other needs on this Edmonton team, but if they just had an above average all-star level goalie, they probably would have won the cup one of these last 2 years. I'm sorry. And I know Skinner was actually pretty good in the 24 postseason through the finals. He was okay in the finals, and had a great stretch at one point in this 25 postseason where he went like over 140 minutes or something without giving up a goal. But it's just too much Jekyll and Hyde. It's just too much Jekyll and Hyde. And I almost didn't put Stuart Skinner on this list for the same reason I didn't put Elias Lindholm on this list. And that is, how much better do we expect Stuart Skinner to be? You know, like, he's had his moments. He had one great year a few years ago, but to be quite honest, he just stinks. He's just not, he's a below league average goaltender. And for a team this good with this much skill in terms of their skaters, it is pretty unfortunate to see Stuart Skinner in the pipes being quite this bad. He was an all-star 2 years ago, which certainly looked like his career high. Since then, we have gotten the highs and lows of the Stuart Skinner experience. It's like riding a roller coaster. And this past year was his worst one. His save percentage went down 9 points to a career low 896, and that GAA went up 9 points to a career worst 2.81, which is crazy, by the way. To take it back a second, Jeremy Swayman was 30 percentage points worse in the goals against average. He was 311. Stuart Skinner in his career worst at 281. So Jeremy Swayman has had a career worst season than Stuart Skinner has. But looking at this, Skinner, from his all-star season in 22-23, his goal save above expected has gone down each season. It was 14.1 in that all-star season 2 years ago, to 3.1 in 2024, all the way down to negative 5.3 in 2025. What does that say about the kid? Okay, he probably had everything come together in 22-23, maybe got a little bit lucky and or played his best hockey. I think that's probably behind him. He also had 23 really bad starts this year. That's games where they make 85% of the saves or less. 23 really bad starts over the last 2 seasons. That is top 5 amongst starting goaltenders in both those years. You probably got the best you can out of Stuart Skinner. It's a real shame for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard, and maybe even a Corey Perry if you feel bad for a guy like that. But he needs to have a bounce back, or else Edmonton needs to go a different direction. I know the goalie market has not been great the last 2 seasons or so. Ottawa probably made the biggest splash by trading for Linus Ullmark. And if they had the money that Jersey ended up spending on him, they probably should have gone after Jake Allen in Edmonton, whose numbers are still pretty good. But they're stuck with Stuart Skinner for right now, and a career backup behind him in Calvin Pickard, a guy who barely is an NHL goaltender. So that problem sounds like it's going to persist for the Oilers. If Stuart Skinner can have a bounce back year and be an above average goalie, if he can be an all-star, they might actually get the job done and win the Stanley Cup, even with their lack of depth. So number 2, Stuart Skinner, which brings us to number 1. We're going to stay out on the West Coast. This guy was a lightning rod the entire 24-25 season. Locker room drama, lack of production, and a huge cap hit. Kind of that like holy trinity of guys who need bounce back seasons. Number 1, the NHL player in the most dire need for a bounce back season this year, Elias Pettersson of the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, all the storylines around this guy and around this team the past season, there's nowhere else we could go except Elias Pettersson. Obviously, this season was marred mostly by drama. The the huge feud between he and JT Miller, guys who have both scored 100 points for the Canucks in the last 2 seasons, or at some point in the last 2 seasons. He ran JT Miller out of town. They trade him to New York, and they say, Elias, you are our guy. In fact, someone who could be a future captain of this organization when Quinn Hughes decides to leave in the next 2 or 3 years. And it still hasn't really looked great since that JT Miller trade. Pretty much a career worst year for Elias Pettersson in 24-25. Just 45 points, 15 goals, 30 assists, and a -10 in his age 26 season. That's the thing that's most alarming about Elias Pettersson. He signed the big contract, and he's supposed to be going into his prime right now. And it looks like just the opposite, actually. In seasons where he has played at least 50 games, he set a career low this year in goals, assists, points, plus minus, power play points, and shot percentage. And the last 3 years have been a huge precipitous decline. From 22-23, when he had 102 points, he goes down to 89 points last season in 23-24. And some Canucks fans were a little worried at that point. Well, then it gets halved the next year to 45. 102 to 89 to 45 points. He has not been effective on the power play. He's still been okay as a defensive center. He was a guy who was getting Selke votes a few years ago, so not exactly at the peak of his career in that statistic as well. It's just really alarming. This is a guy that signed through the 2031-32 season. He should be entering his prime right now, and the Canucks should probably think long and hard about trading the kid at $11.6 million a year. That's a huge cap hit, and everything is going down. Like, the writing is on the wall right now. I put him in the bounce back category because I do believe he can do that. If any of you have watched or listened to the show for a while, you'll know I am a big Elias Pettersson guy. I've been a huge fan of him since he came into the league. He's the kind of player I would love my Bruins to get. Not, getting greasy and grimy down in the corners because they focus too much on that, but rather just getting some guys with elite skill. And Elias Pettersson has had that. He's had an elite shot. He's been a great playmaker. He's obviously been a tremendous two-way forward. Like, he should be one of the best value guys in the league as a number one center, 200-foot game, and elite scorer. But he has gone away from that big time in the last few seasons. And this is something that Edmonton really needs to take into account. Why I think he will be a great bounce-back candidate in 25-26 is I actually like what Vancouver did in this offseason. There's a ton of question marks around the drama, the locker room, and whether that has been ironed out. But Elias Pettersson is going to play on a first line with Jake DeBrusk on one wing and Brock Besser on the other. Okay, both those guys scored over 25 goals in a tumultuous season for the Canucks last year. Jake DeBrusk set a career high with 28 goals. They're both still in their prime years. They're both under the age of 30. So this should be a prime year for Elias Pettersson to bounce back, playing with two good, physical enough wingers who can score 25-plus goals. It should be another 70 to 80 point season if you're being optimistic around Elias Pettersson this year. He should be fully recovered from that injury that he got late in the 24 season that probably lingered into last season as well. So Elias Pettersson, for me, number one bounce back candidate in the NHL for 25-26. I'm interested to see what happens with that Vancouver team in general. I liked what they did with the Besser deal. I really did. I thought he was going to get $8 or $9 million on the open market. You brought him back for 7.25, which looked impossible. That dude was cleaning out his locker months ago. So Elias Pettersson, for me, the number one bounce back candidate for this next NHL season. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is going to bounce back after a disappointing season this past year? Let me know in the comments section below. Who's the most important to bounce back for their team? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are jacked up for this 25-26 NHL season. And be sure to catch us here every weekday live on YouTube at high noon Eastern time. And then we're available wherever you get your podcasts as well. Check out the other videos on the channel, talking Bruins, talking hockey, a lot of other things going on in the world of Boston sports and in hockey news. I'm your host, Cam Stuart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air 5 days a week.